Hey Ravi, thank you so much for agreeing to do this. Really looking forward to the chat.
Thanks for having me, guys. Good to be here.
So Ravi, we'll start with a few rapid fire questions. We keep experimenting with formats. We'll try this. We are trying this with you for the first time. So, so please pardon any challenges. We'll get better at it over time. So the first one is, if you could be a professional in any other field, unrelated to what you do, what would it be?
Definitely a musician of some sort, like a music producer or something like that.
Got it. And that's why that explains the audio setup that you have.
Yeah, I dabble in that once in a while, so that's definitely one of my passions. I'd love to do that too.
I understand. If you could have dinner with any three historical or even live figures, I think that's fine. Who would that be and why?
In today's day and age, definitely Elon Musk. I'm a huge fan of Bill Gates and probably Bill Clinton as well.
I think Elon and Bill Gates on the same table may be a bit of a problem, but sure. Bill Clinton is an interesting choice. Why Bill Clinton?
I think I just grew up right in the U.S. and Canada, and he's had a crazy childhood, right? And he was able to do so much in his lifetime, and he's been through so many problems and kind of came back from the brink of destruction. I think he's a fantastic person to just hang out with and maybe have dinner with or something like that.
So the resilience and his journey, I think, is what that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think for a founder, Bill Gates and Elon Musk, generally more traditional options. This was interesting.
I don't know if you guys know his childhood he's had. He's had a crazy childhood growing up, Bill Gates. So just coming from that to where he becoming president of the United States is an incredible story. So
amazing. If you were the host of the AJVC podcast, what would you ask yourself?
What would I ask myself? Wow. Maybe what would you do differently? In your journey.
So Mazin, that's a question for us. We will ask Ravi that question.
But I would assume most people probably say they would not do much differently. But I think if you really probe them long enough, they'd probably say something different. So there's always learnings, right, in your journey. So I think that's an important question.
So we will definitely ask you that question today. Thank you. This is how you do a podcast with no research. You ask the guest what do you want us to ask you.
Smart, very smart. Good strategy.
Bootstrapped versus funded.
We kind of thought, had an in-between approach, but I would say bootstrap definitely brings out, better unit economics and makes you last longer long-term and build a business for the right reasons. So if you can bootstrap it as much as you can, bootstrap it as much as you can.
3 startups you'd invest in today.
I'll tell you fields, right, rather than just individual startup.
That's fine.
AI of all sorts, right? I would focus a lot on that. I'm a big fan of manufacturing in India. I think that's going to obviously take off thematically. I'm also a big fan of military, expenditures, and I think India has a long way to go there as well. So, aerospace, for example, we're very, very behind, considering what we could be doing. So, in those 3 domains, just off the top of my head.
That's awesome. I think you could even combine the 3 and make a company. I'm pretty sure.
Even better.
Yeah. Generalist versus specialist?
I mean, I'm way more of a generalist. So I don't specialize in pretty much anything. So by that token, generalist.
I understand. The final rapid... Sorry, go ahead, Ravi.
I like to hire specialists to some extent, but I'm more of a generalist for sure.
I understand. The final one, what's one truth few people agree with you on? That you believe. So you believe it's truth, but if you say it to someone else, most people will say that I disagree.
Yeah, I don't know if everybody would disagree with something like this, but I think, at least from our own team makeup standpoint, some of the earliest hires you have are the most critical. And and it's very important to get the right team in place. It's hard to replace that initial passion they build a business with, and those initial half a dozen people are very, very important.
Get your first 10 to 20 hires, right? How many people were you?
Take your time getting those people right.
Right. I think you have that liberty when you're bootstrapped also. Just going back to your earlier answer on bootstrap versus funded. Sometimes there's this, because I invest in companies. I know the liberty of time you have, maybe not that much, because you're always with this ticking clock called runway.
Yeah, exactly.
That's interesting. No, awesome. I think that makes sense. I think getting your, it's almost like the big bang of a company, and your first early culture that you set, it scales that way in some sense. So you have
And
to,
also, we're just in this mindset of always doing things quickly, recklessly almost,
right,
speed is everything. And I think that is the mantra, right, that everybody kind of talks about. But
right.
sometimes you should take your time, and being slow and meticulous and deliberate is very important. So those initial people you hire are extremely important.
How many people were you involved in the hiring process? I'm guessing you still are, but till what level were you involved in every hire? Till number 50, number 100? What was that?
Like, we have about 600 people now at
Right.
Upstox. So I think definitely the first couple hundred people.
Wow.
Yeah, they were all very, very closely involved in, to different degrees, of course, right?
Right.
And then we try to, keep a tab on who's coming on board. But I think culture is definitely set by the way you hire and the people you bring on board. We've learned a lot too as we've hired more and more people. What patterns to look out for, and what's a good culture fit at Upstox. So we try to be quite involved in the hiring process even today, but of course less so than, I would say, the first couple hundred people we were, very much involved with.
Understand. You've had a very different journey from a lot of the guests that we've had on the podcast. You and your family migrated from India when you were very young. Could you talk us through the early days growing up? What was your experience and exposure like, and why did you eventually come back to India? You obviously studied abroad too.
Yeah, no, definitely, man. This is a question I get asked a lot, and it's not like I really planned to so-called come back to India, because I was born in India, in Jabalpur, Madhya Pradesh. My brother and I were both born. My younger brother and I were both born there. Our dad was an IIT Delhi PhD, and at the age of 4, he got a job in France. So my brother was just born, and we moved to France, in Lyon, France. I was there for almost 5 years, so up until 3rd grade. Fantastic upbringing, but zero English. And my mom was like, she wanted her kids to learn some English, at least conversational English. So she convinced my dad to move to Canada. So we lived in Ottawa, Canada, for 8 years. I was there up until senior year of high school, just 1 year shy of senior year of high school. And growing up, no one in our family is like a business person at all, but
Right.
we're academics and stuff like that. And but my dad's always kind of told my brother and me to get into business and get into entrepreneurship. And he's kind of maybe didn't want us to follow the path he followed, which is of going to school forever and getting jobs and stuff like that. And so ever since, from a young age, I think my brother Raghu and I have been kind of conditioned to just do our own thing. And in middle school, when I was like 12, 13 years old, I would call my mom on payphone and get into buying, selling stocks through payphones, and just started getting into just investing. Yeah, just reading the newspaper, seeing that there's something called the stock market. You can buy stocks, and my parents were generous enough to lend us some of their money to just open up a small fund or whatever, and just learn the ropes. But it started really early, and I kind of understood the power of trading and investing from a very, very early age. Then, Ottawa, Canada is a very small town. It's the capital of Canada, but it's like less than 1 million people population.
Right.
You pretty much knew everybody. And Again, my mom convinced my dad to get out of there and go for greener pastures, so to speak, for their kids' benefit. So we moved to Southern California, which was a fantastic place, for me to move senior high school. So I was there senior high school. Raghu was there, I think, just starting out high school, and I ended up going to, university there. I got a degree in computer science from the University of California, Irvine. And all of a sudden, right, I went from this small town in Canada to the land of entrepreneurship and startups. And to me, it was an incredible place to be, the energy. And I knew that I wanted to that's what I wanted to do, right? So I would literally volunteer. We had no work permit at that time, but I would still go to college and spend 20 hours a week just volunteering at a local startup called Free DSL.
This is what year broadly, Ravi?
This is year when I started university, it was 1999. So
okay, just at the .com.
Exactly.
Wow.
Right. So again, an incredible time, right? And I remember walking to this company called Free DSL, and there was two founders from Harvard that ran a company 300 people, and I'm like, dude, this is the most incredible job they're doing right now, and they were building. So they're trying to basically build just that free DSL, offering broadband for free via an ad supported system.
Oh.
And I was doing customer service and whatever I could learn, right? I would just try to learn different things. And again, I was not being paid for any of this stuff because I didn't have a work permit, right? So it took me, I got a degree in computer science, but it took me 6.5 years to get my Bachelor of Science degree, BSc, that's what they call it out there, right? From in my degree, because I would either work almost 20, 30 hours a week, or I would, start up different companies. So I tried 3 different startups. 2 of them didn't do well, and one of them ended up doing very well later on. My friends keep running it today. Again, an incredible time, right? To be in California, to be amidst this amazing, just ecosystem of entrepreneurship was I can't thank my lucky stars enough to, for me just being there at that point in time. Then I graduated and finally, and my parents had moved to Chicago by then. My younger brother was still in school, university, and so I drove out, to Chicago, and I got a job at a brokerage company out there called Thinkorswim, which is a options trading platform.
I'm aware of that company. Surprisingly, my ex-boss talked about this company a lot. He was based out of Chicago. He was a venture investor. Now, obviously, he's all over the place.
Wow.
But he talked.
Was that which company?
So he used to work at TCV.
Oh yeah. They're funded by
TCV. Yes, exactly. And they were backed by TCV. So
yeah. So world
is a small place. Interesting.
Yeah, they raised I think $25-30 million from TCV.
Correct.
So a company that invested in them, and
correct.
So there's a guy named Tom Sosnoff that ran that shop, along with a guy named Scott. And Tom was this, back then, a 55-year-old entrepreneur, running maybe a company, maybe a couple hundred people strong, extremely high energy, and the way he ran it, with the passion he ran that shop with was just incredible, and they completely changed the way people did active options trading at the retail level. Actually, I just flew out to meet Tom last month, after 15 years. And I told him, the learnings I had with you in Chicago working, right? Just seeing you at work, right, for those couple of years, I think had some role to play in the founding of Upstox, and it was a very emotional, I think moment for me when I got to meet him again. But I spent about a couple of years there, incredible learnings. And again, my brother and I wanted to start our own business, right? That was always the intention. And my younger brother Raghu got out of school with a degree in actuarial science from Urbana-Champaign. And once he got out, I had saved up maybe $20,000, $30,000. And my parents put in a little bit more money, maybe $20K. And then we started doing high frequency trading. So my brother was a quant and I was a programmer. And, out of our parents' house in Chicago, we turned that $40,000, $50,000 into $3.5 $3.5 million.
Oh my God.
Just
Wow.
trading, so again, incredible time of our life, and I think we learned a
You should
lot.
have been running a hedge fund, Ravi, I think. Probably got into the wrong line.
No, I don't know, man. I think I really enjoy what I do now.
No,
I
no, of
think,
course. I'm kidding. Mhm.
yeah, I think the thing with things like hedge funds and high frequency trading, at least from my biased viewpoint, is I feel like you're just making money for yourself. There's even during those 3 years, 2 years, and my brother and I did what we did. It was just us against the machines, right? And it's like dog eats dog kind of mentality,
Right.
and but it was an incredible phase of our life, right? And we basically had so-called made it. We had all this money that we had made, and in 2008 the markets had crashed, and we had zero staff by then, right? It was just my brother and me doing our thing. And then 2008 the markets crashed. Luckily, we didn't lose any of our money. My brother was a smart one, and he realized something weird was happening, and we took out all of our capital in the nick of time, and we had nothing to do. We basically had all this money in our bank account, and US at that point had like literally 10-15% unemployment. The world was a very dark place at that time, but then
Did it feel like it was the end?
again, I was very like naive and young, and I didn't really know much better, but because we were so in our own world, right, of just like trading, that we didn't really even know what the hell was happening, man. All we knew was that big banks like Lehman Brothers that were just literally shutting down, brands that you thought were like evergreen, right? We're going through a very, very difficult time. So yeah, it did. I think so, right? It just felt, I remember on the street that my parents lived on, there were like daily robberies happening, because of unemployment and homelessness, and definitely a very dark phase, right, in world history. But my brother and I had not, growing up, we would visit India every couple of years. We would go to Jabalpur and, meet Nanima and our mamas and stuff like that. And so we hadn't been in India in like 10 years, because we were just like working and going to school. So we thought, Tika Abhi, let's go, check out family. And we made a trip to India. And India was so secluded, right? There was none of this chaos that was happening in the States. And, our mama took us to a sub-broker office of a Sharekhan sub-broker office. And I remember like walking in there was like a small room with like 20 people, and all these guys were just so-called jobbing, like manually arbitraging between NSE and BSE on these like keyboards, like literally like just manual arbitraging. And then my brother and I looked at each other. I'm like, this is incredible. They're basically doing what we were doing, but in a manual way. So again, we were very naive. We didn't really think twice. We said, let's just see what happens. Let's come out here. And I don't think we thought of it as moving to India or anything like that. We were just like, we'd just come here, maybe spend a couple of years or something and see what happens. And we made the jump, and Srini, one of Raghu's friends from university, also joined us as founder at that time. And we started up what was known as RKSV, which is the parent company of Upstox. So, that's how we started, so our roots were one of the first people to get what's called direct market access in India, and one of the first people to write algorithms and autonomously kind of trade the markets, on the exchanges. And we started, multiplying our capital a little bit. And in 2012 is when we started the retail business. So the first 2 years, we were just doing proprietary trading. High frequency trading, proprietary trading, our own money. And in 2012, we thought, why not just leverage his license to also get into the world of retail brokerage? And it was very slow, man. We were very, we had this complete like NRI mindset of not opening up anything offline, only doing online, only, like online the whole way, and this is before Aadhar, internet penetration, doing its magic. And so growth was very, very slow up until Aadhar came into play, which is in 2016. We were so what I tell people is our real birth was then, right? Like up until then, we were lucky if we opened up like a few hundred accounts a month. And
Oh,
then,
wow.
because it was a hardcore, process. Opening up an account, like I should be giving awards, man, for people opening up accounts back then. It's like 25
But big
page
account,
document.
right? And so how many years was this? Like what time? Like how long were you guys going at? So you
we
set up
started,
in India when, and then 2016 Aadhar came in. Just trying to understand how long.
yeah. So retail business started in 2012. Okay. So 4 years, right?
Yeah.
4 years, maybe more than 4 years, almost 4.5 years. We were just doing this manual account opening process, which is 25, 30 pages. We also had a prop business a little bit, which eventually just shut shop. But
why did you guys shut down the prop trading though? I mean, you decided to focus completely on the retail, which wasn't growing quickly, was it?
Yeah, because you may have heard, NSE went through its own kind of issues back then, right? And the whole high frequency trading co-location issue happened, and we had no idea. All of a sudden, we were not getting any fills. We would get very high fill rate, and all of a sudden, like within a span of a year, we were getting no fills. So we knew something was happening. We didn't know what was happening, but we basically had a natural death in that business. But the retail side had started picking up by then to some extent, and
people were coming online and opening accounts without like any mobile internet, and obviously broadband penetration must be super low in India at that point.
Yeah, it was all web. Opening up an internet browser and basically printing up PDF form, filling up a PDF form online, and then printing out 25 pages. I mean, who the hell is going to some local shop to print this document and then couriering it to our office in Bombay. And I would say more than half those accounts had something wrong with them. Like some signature match, some document is missing. Then you had to call the customer and be like, sorry, man, this is missing. Please resend, getting cursed out on the phone. It was just like I used to literally tell myself like why did I move to India? Why
did I sign up for this pain myself?
I'm in the wrong country, doing an online business kind of thing. And of course, now we're thanking our lucky stars, right, that we persisted. And so it was an incredible time, man. I think that, again, that's what I'm saying. Like the first people you hire are very important because those folks have seen it all, and business was very different back then. And then starting, when Aadhar, e-sign, and eKYC started, digital onboarding started for us, and that was our real birth. So we were the first brokerage to actually digitize on the online account opening process, and we allowed a fully 100% paperless online account opening journey. And I remember like that first month we went from opening say 400 accounts a month to like opening 1,000 accounts that first month. Within a couple months opening 2,000 accounts, it's just been exponential since then, right? And so in India now, right, there's like, of course, you guys know this more than me, but it's just a whole different world, right? I think it's like when I go to the US now, it's like you guys have it so much better than we do now, right? And it's a whole different dynamic and discussion. So and the cost of broadband is so cheap. We take everything for granted here. I tell people this all the time. It's like you have no idea what you have on the digital side. I think India, of course, has long ways to go on the physical infrastructure side, granted, and I think the government is doing a lot, to make up for lost time. But on the digital side, there has probably never been a better time to open up a digital business than now. The folks of the country have it so good in terms of just digital access, low cost of internet, and when you go abroad, you start seeing, right, just how incredible this ecosystem is.
That's crazy. And just before we jump into the Upstox story, I'm curious as to how your parents were so okay with you starting to trade so early, encouraging you to start businesses. I know it's not replicable, but any insights from that? Why did your parents have that supportive attitude? Because in India, it's just the opposite. They will not let you touch money very early. They will definitely tell you not to do business. They would have had a heart attack if their kid took 6.5 years to get through college. So what worked there, if there's anything?
like my mom still, I think, wished that either my brother or me became a doctor, a lawyer, or something. She's
Okay.
like, but
She's
my
like,
dad,
all this is okay, but do you have a degree as a doctor?
yeah, like she won't say it to me now, but I think deep inside she still wishes I had some degree beyond just a bachelor's degree of science or whatever.
Yeah.
But my dad is exact opposite, man. I think we owe a lot to him. I think he's always understood the power of business and entrepreneurship, and he's driven my brother to subconsciously get into this. So we owe a lot to him, I think. And I think we're very lucky in that sense, man. I think also, we've grown up in so many different countries, been in so many different schools. All that also helps, right? Because you have to fight your way through, different social circles, making friends, and all those are skills you need, right, as you start up businesses. But I think even today, I think it's way more accepted now, right, to be a so-called entrepreneur. I think back to times of like when Infosys started, or the Tatas did their thing, or the Birlas did their thing. I mean, there was nothing like we have today, right? The ecosystem now is so evolved, and those guys did it like and there was nothing around, man. It's incredible, hearing their stories. So today India is in a whole different place, and kids coming out of universities and colleges today have it so much better, just not just from a funding standpoint, but just from an access standpoint, from a talent standpoint, confidence standpoint. When I meet, young cats today coming out, it's just like, they're so confident, it's like they know what they want to do. It's very inspiring to see that. It was not the case when we first went to India in 2010. It was a very different world. So it's amazing seeing that transition, and it being such a young country, right? It's just really exciting to see what happens this next decade, 2 decades.
Coming back to your story with Upstox, so the transition happened with Aadhar. You guys kind of opened up quickly and grew exponentially, and then COVID came in. So tell us about the next few years. How did you handle that growth? How did you keep up with competitive landscape changing as well? I think a lot more people got into the market, and you guys continued to grow.
Yeah. So look, I think again, when you look back, things kind of make sense, but when you're in the middle of it all, it's hard to exactly know why we did it.
Line up nicely, but
yeah, but I can tell you that I think in our space, right, I think the brand is very, very important. And India is still very, very early stage in terms of equity participation, retail equity participation.
Yeah, it's quite low. It's single digits, right? I think. I'm sorry. The number of people with Demat accounts in India, it's still single digits. I think last time I checked, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. It's like sub 6-7% of the population, have exposure to the equity markets, and this is like 45-50% in places like the US. Even China has almost 20% equity participation. Yeah. But then you combine that with a very high savings rate, and you combine that with a GDP that's like second to none, right? And then almost $3.5 trillion of publicly traded market cap, which in these next 10, 20 years can become 10, 15, $20 trillion of publicly traded market cap. And you have this incredible bedrock, right, of building, of getting people just to invest in their own backyard, right? That's the way I look at it. And in the US, right, you have these incredible brands and platforms like Charles Schwab, for example. Right. Like Charles Schwab is a story I tell people in India, at least, because it's a brand everybody doesn't know. But Schwab today, Schwab started in the 1970s, and they today have over 35 million customers in a country of 300 million people, the U.S. Oh, wow. And they have over $7 trillion of AUM, right? In a country of $23 trillion GDP, they have like a third of that in AUM. And that's just one brand, right? Vanguard is another incredible brand with multiple $1 trillion of AUM. Fidelity has 45 million customers. So, there's like these 6, 7, 8 brands in the US that have literally helped the American people really benefit from the economic growth story of the US, which is one of the most incredible economic growth stories of our time. And I think, not just me, I'm sure you guys believe this too, but the India story is just getting started. These next 20, 30 years will probably be an even more incredible story.
What's amazing is I feel like India is sort of leapfrogging the US, right? I mean, you mentioned a lot of these brokerage firms, but then you have companies like Robinhood coming up and still disrupting them. And India, I think you can kind of learn from the best of what you see in the West and kind of come in, to capitalize on that. But Robinhood did change stuff, right? And I'm sure that you guys felt the effect of that, and brokerage fees going down.
And exactly. I think Robinhood really, again, Robinhood did this in the U.S. where the market was already fairly saturated, and they cater to a younger audience. So if you're like a 22-year-old, you would basically hop on Robinhood. But it doesn't compare to a platform like, say, Schwab in terms of AUM,
right,
and just overall number of customers, right? And so our vision, right, for the future is, how do you build an incredible brand that just helps people participate and benefit from the India growth story, and right. It doesn't have to be very complicated. The equity markets are growing at 9, 12, 13% year on year, and you just have to be plugged into that growth. And so low cost, of course, is a reality. Low brokerage rates is a reality in our space, and you make that up through more volume and through higher numbers. So we have almost 11 million customers at Upstox today, and we just keep growing, right? So our hope is, right, in these next 20 years that we're able to build a brand, as legendary as, say, Schwab or a Vanguard or a Fidelity, and it'll be, I think the India story is going to be very different than the US. We have a younger population. The digitization journey in India is very different. We enjoy a whole different, set of tools and platforms and ecosystem that the US has. Even this thing that, like a demat account doesn't exist in the US, for example. So we have all these, this entire kind of infrastructure that the government's given us here to work on, right? And it just won't be Upstox, right? I think there'll be many players like us that'll just build, keep building these brands and get people to invest in the India growth story.
And Ravi, just a question on that. What do you think nudges a country to participate more in the equity markets? Is there something you can do structurally? How do you think that participation rate goes up?
The most important thing is, making it easy and digital. Like when we've noticed that it's just it's an exponential relationship. If you like, again, Aadhar was a huge enabler for us. So the easier you're able to make opening up a demat account and making that entire account opening process easier and easier, it just gets younger people to open up an account faster and faster. We've been very impressed, frankly, by just folks coming to us and knowing that they need to invest better, knowing that they need to save better. So before, it used to be like, we used to think, you have to, like in the US, for example, you have to convince people to save. People don't save. They just spend. Right? On credit, they spend, right? So here the story is like people save, right? But they're just now looking at, they know that India is growing at this incredible rate. Nifty and Sensex are breaking new barriers every month. Everybody hears these stories. And they just want to know how to do it, and what to do. And so making that whole process as simple as possible is a huge, huge enabler. And the best thing, I think the government's done is just digitizing more and more, right? And doing more and more on a continual basis, right? Now we have this account aggregator framework that's launching,
right,
which will be another, right? So there's just so many things, man, and on the back of all this enablement, there's more and more businesses that can start up and leverage. So like being a fintech entrepreneur in India is just like, it's our problem is more, we need to learn to say no to things, because it's easy to do everything. You can lend digitally, you can do payments digitally, you can get demat accounts open digitally, you can invest, you can do everything, insurance aggregation digitally on the same account. So, I think what ends up happening is brands get muddled, they become confused as to what they stand for.
Right.
So
the tyranny of options.
Yeah. So going back to the Schwab example, for example, Schwab also offers many, many things, but you walk into a relationship with Schwab because you want someone to help you manage your investments better, or to invest more optimally. And we want to make sure that we're very careful about building our brand, brick by brick, in that same vein.
And, over the years, what's changed with your brand and kind of how people perceive it, right? I mean, the market's changed and a lot of things have evolved. I mean, how have you guys changed, if at all? And
yeah, so I think we've become, our starting point was more on the active trading side. We're still known for, a platform that kind of targets options traders and active investors and traders, and stock traders as well. And we knew that, that space makes us a lot of money. But long term, we want to just play a very integral role in getting the masses to invest optimally, behind the growth story of India. So to us, that was building a platform called Upstox Invest, which is what we've been very, focused on these past couple of years. So when you open up the Upstox app today, you have two modes you can choose from. One is Upstox Pro, which targets active traders, which is, again, our specialty and what we're kind of known for. And Upstox Invest is another platform we launched about 6 months ago, which took us almost a year and a half to make, which is just getting anybody out there to just begin investing in a very easy way, behind, SIPing their way to stardom, right? So we have a lot of content. We don't have things like options trading on there at all. We don't solicit. We just try to get you to do the right things long term, so you build your wealth over time. And we've been very, very excited by that, and we think that we'll launch more and more products there, with a focus on investing. So our brand, we've also been very lucky to sponsor cricket in India in a very huge way. We just finished our third year of partnership with the IPL, which has really, I think, catapulted our brand to a whole different level, and ICC as well. And that was with the intent of just building this mass offering, right? And so we have 11 million customers today. Our ambition is we want to open up 100 million customers, get to 100 million customers these next 6-7 years.
100 million means India's penetration obviously is much more than 10%. Hopefully,
exactly.
Yeah.
That's the. I mean, if my way to look at it is, if Schwab can have 35 million customers, Fidelity can have 45 million customers. Vanguard probably has like 10, 15, 20 million customers. I don't know, something like that. I think India has no business not having hundreds of millions of customers. It's very important that equity participation really, really radically increases, and it's happening. It doesn't require much. It's just about, at least from our vantage point, is the brand is very, very important, which is why we sponsored IPL. Right. We wanted, brand awareness to really, really go through the roof. And we now spend these next 5-6 years really activating that and getting people to come on board. So all of our employees are driven towards this, right? It's about helping people participate in the India growth story, getting people to just do the right thing again and again over time. And, people are so lucky, Indians today are so lucky to live in a country which is growing at 11-12% year on year. You don't get that anywhere else.
Right.
And so the earlier people, begin SIPing their way into, say like an ETF, passive ETF, for example, the more they're able to make their money work for them. So that's what we're trying to do.
And Ravi, just for someone who is first time exploring equity, the competing platforms can look similar. How do you differentiate? Sure. How do you stand out? What's the secret sauce that you can share, of course?
Yeah. Look, I think and we have fantastic competition. I think there's nothing like competition to bring about the best in you, and I think all of us now are working towards increasing equity participation. So 90% of customers at Upstox are of incremental ads that we onboard every month. 90% of them are first-time DMAT account, users. So they've never opened up a DMAT account, and Upstox is our first port of call. in their investment journey. And I don't think that's just us. I think almost all of our competition would have very similar statistics. So
Right.
this is not, I'm stealing market share from XYZ.
Some game like in trading, like you said.
I think we all share a passion in getting people across the country to just invest, and not just keep their money in a savings account or in a cash account or even in FDs and channel that towards, much, much better places so they can grow with the Indian economy. And this is the US story too, right? Like, again, there's probably like 10 platforms in the US that each have over $1 trillion in AUM. And if you were to tell me today which differentiates A versus B versus C, they're all, from a certain vantage point, look very similar, but it's all about the brand. It's all about how you get to the customer and how can you serve that customer. So to us, it's about that. It's a one-on-one relationship. If I'm able to onboard you today, you come to me because I offer, say some platform to help you invest better or trade better. Through that relationship, I don't want to lose your trust. I want to just do more and more, and over time you build up more and more AUM, and hopefully that just makes you more and more money over long term. And these are very sticky platforms long term if you do the right thing. So that's the way you look at it. There's unlike something like, say, e-commerce, right, where there's like a one player, two player, kind of business ecosystem industry. This is not like that. This is my relationship with the customer, and there's some economies of scale, but very little. So India it's just getting started, man. We're at 6-7% equity participation. The journey to 20%, it's very, very exciting, and we're all at it in our own ways.
What do you think's next? Like, what are some areas that are exciting? You mentioned AI. Is that definitely play a role? For an aspiring entrepreneur, perhaps who's interested in fintech, what means do you suggest they look into?
Yeah. So again, I think India is one of those places where, to state what I said earlier, it's just easy to do everything. So we're very careful in launching new verticals. When we launch a new area of business, we want to make sure that it's an adjacency that makes sense. So, for example, we won't get into payments right away, because I don't see how it makes sense from a wealth management platform personally. So, everything we launch is with that mindset. If I were to cross-sell it to my customers today, does it make sense? And, I think over time, we'll probably launch many, many things, and it's just a matter of, like, again, to go back to the Schwab example, I know I keep mentioning their Schwab many, many times because the company I look up to tremendously. But Schwab today, is a manufacturer of different, investment products. They're a brokerage company, of course. They also have their own bank license. They do credit cards. They do home loans. They do pretty much everything, and but their focal point is still wealth management and trading and brokerage. And through that relationship, they've been able to do just wonderful, magical things to help the customer. So that's how we approach it. India is extremely exciting, and we can easily launch many, many things, but we're very careful. So I'm very excited by the account aggregator framework and seeing what we can do there. There's things that we can do on the lending side, which are very exciting. Things on the manufacturing side, becoming an AMC, are all things that we're exploring.
I guess experiment and learn is the approach.
Yeah, and the thing is that I think a lot of fintechs will probably have very similar answers, right? If you were to talk to a payments company today, they'll probably tell you something like, "We want to get into XYZ," or everyone starts from some place and they want to do everything because it's so easy to do everything.
It's about trust, right? Once you have someone's trust, you can always tell them another service.
But my thing is more like, what do they trust you for? What's the primary reason they came to you, right? And do they have reason to believe that you can launch something else basis that initial entry point of your brand, is something that I pay a lot of attention to.
How are you seeing the Indian economy hold up with everything a bit turbulent globally? Do you think the regulator has helped, or is it India kind of delinking from how the world is operating and growing in some sense? Just macro perspective on the economy as well as the equity markets.
I think India has always been kind of on its own path, and it really helps us, I think in many ways, because India itself has just such incredible growth potential just on its own merit, and it's an inward looking country in that sense, right? We consume our own products, we manufacture for ourselves, and there's less reliance on the outside world. That'll of course change, right? As India enters manufacturing and and all that, so which is also great, right? But I think short term, I think we've done pretty well this past financial year, for example, right? U.S. markets had gone down quite a bit, but India kind of fared much better. We're already reaching new highs. So from a macro standpoint, man, I think it's an extremely exciting place to be, and I've just been impressed by, the work the government's been doing from a, access standpoint and from a digital ecosystem standpoint. I think we're just so blessed, so lucky to, be entrepreneurs, fintech entrepreneurs in a country like India.
Right.
And they're doing more and more, right? It's not like they've done enough and they're kind of sitting back. We're seeing more and more happening, and it's very exciting to see that. So I think we're in very good shape, man, in that sense.
And you plan to go public in a few years, maybe 5. What's the thought process there? You've also mentioned that there are plans to be an asset management company. Just thought processes on the future, going public. How is that shaping up?
Yeah, we would look. We're a brokerage company. We allow people to buy stocks through our platform, and we exist because of stock markets. And I think it'd be really cool for us to go public at some point, and allow our customers to buy a piece of our own story. And just overall, I think it's a great thing to do. Brings a lot of transparency, a lot of governance, provides an exit to a lot of people. So there's no rush for us to do this, but I think at some point we'd like to, be publicly listed company in India. So that's definitely something that we're planning, but again, not in a very super active way. And, there's no kind of timeline in mind in that sense. Look, we're a profitable business, right? We did over 1,000 crores in revenue this previous fiscal, and we've been growing very well. And we think this year we may hit, 25% PAT margins kind of a business.
Wow.
While we keep
amazing.
Thank you. While we keep continuing, top line growth, but it's I don't like the idea of being some super fast, reckless business, which just pursues numbers for the sake of pursuing numbers. It's, if you want to build, a brand like Schwab, it's a very long-term story. We want to build a brand that lasts multiple generations, ideally over time. So it's about doing the right things again and again and again. And so I love the idea of slow, consistent, profitable growth, and just, keep hacking away, quarter on quarter. And there's, again, India itself as a backdrop is this incredible place to be building a brokerage business or wealth management business like we are. We're able to hire fantastic talent. We have 100 million, there's very few places where you can say, I want to onboard 100 million customers in these next 7-8 years, and be confident.
And it doesn't sound crazy. I mean,
yeah, it doesn't sound crazy, right? So it's just amazing, man. Again, for anybody aspiring to start a business, right, or maybe even thinking of moving back to India, from abroad to start a business, I think there's never been a better time. It's just the ecosystem here is just incredible.
And just before we get to our final few questions, what do you think makes a brokerage work as a business from an economics perspective? Why do you think they tend to end up being profitable as well?
So brokerage is a very diverse business. There's multiple revenue lines. In our case, there's active traders that kind of foot the bills, and it's not just in Upstox's case, but it's the case with all our competitors as well.
Right.
And but from a long-term perspective, if you look at, again, a company like, say, Schwab, they're net interest income business. They make money on lending, on things like home mortgage, for example, which is crazy thought, right? So I think long term,
So they are a bank, is what you're saying, which I kind of subscribe to in some sense. They're the new age banks.
yeah, exactly, right? You go to a Schwab because you want to buy stocks or mutual funds, but leveraging that, they're able to do a lot more with you,
Right.
for you, right? And same with we see ourselves doing something very similar, right? As long as you have the trust of the customer, there's a lot you can do. And for us, that's all about doing the right thing again and again and helping them build wealth. If we're able to help them build wealth, long term, there's a lot of money to be made, across a variety of different types of products, right? Being an AMC, if you have $1 trillion in AUM, even if you're making 10, 15, 20 basis points, that's a lot of money, right? Billions of dollars in revenue. But it's a long-term game, right? Nobody today has $1 trillion in AUM, but a country with the growth of India, with so much potential behind it, ahead of it, it's going to happen, right? So
Right.
it's just about, and doing that in a digital native way, being a profitable business basically gives you eternal runway to do your thing. So again, there's a lot, we don't want to reinvent the wheel in that sense. There's many brands, in the US and abroad that have done this. We're just trying to do it, in a 2023 and beyond way, for the Indian masses. I think that's the challenge that we have ahead of us, and the opportunities is very, very exciting.
Fascinating. And in this brokerage business, what were some customer behavior examples or insights that kind of surprised you? You had a thought that, hey, I expect the customers to behave in a way, but it turned out to be dramatically different. Any key insights on customers, their behavior that surprised you?
I don't think I'm no crazy surprises in that sense, but I remember my mom, right, growing up in the US, she would check up on, my dad's 401k, which is a retirement plan, which was managed by Fidelity. Every week, she would just log in and just see the family's retirement account, right, and how it's doing, right. And so I think one thing is that as long as they're able to build wealth for people, people care about their money, care about their savings, and there's high levels of engagement, on the app.
Right.
So, I've been amazed, at seeing how you're able to leverage that engagement and do more things. And again, in a place like India, with this entire ecosystem as your backdrop, you can do so much, right, in terms of engagement and bolting on new product lines. So, so leveraging that engagement, and doing more and more is what we've been kind of cognizant of. We're aware this is possible. But seeing those patterns, right, and how we can leverage it more and more is something that has been very fascinating.
What's next for Upstox?
Just more slow and steady growth, right, and just not effing up, not doing anything stupid is the mantra, and it's just slow and steady growth in our business, man, and it just takes one or two stupid things to hurt your brand. You don't want to hurt your brand. So, we have a very privileged position in the sense that people trust us with their money. They deposit funds with us, and we're custodians of their hard-earned savings, and getting that to grow is our responsibility. So, India is growing at this incredible pace, and building your brand out slowly and steadily is the most important thing for us. So, just not do anything too drastic, not being too fast to jump on new things, for the sake of jumping on new things,
Right.
Is what we're more focused on.
Amazing. So just to close, and why we call this Founders Unfiltered, what's one piece of unfiltered feedback you received in your journey as a founder that really changed your perspective and has stayed with you for very long?
Culture building. Again, going back to my Thinkorswim days, right, and seeing Tom Sosnoff was incredible. It was a family. Some of the people that have worked with him since then still work for them today. The core team still is there today.
Wow.
And it's all about the culture. It's all about getting the right set of people, believing in the vision. Money will come, right? If you all believe in something deep enough with a lot of passion, there's many ways of slicing and dicing that opportunity into revenue streams and making something that makes sense financially. But that initial team that comes on board, building that culture, going out and getting things done, and building magic is very, very important. So that's what I would say, like shoot for the stars, get the right set of people on board, and make sure you have the right culture from day one and just keep working at it.
Awesome. Ravi, thank you so much for sharing your journey and insights. It was a wonderful experience walking through how you built Upstox as well as the opportunity for India. I think we couldn't be more excited about the Indian opportunity as well. So thank you, and thank you for sharing.
Well, thank you. And you guys are doing incredible work too. I just want to say that, it's very important role you're playing in the ecosystem, and and it's amazing, seeing all the you may not notice it, right? But it just takes one or two founders future founders to be listening to your podcast to ignite something in them to just go out and change the world. So, thanks for doing as well.